Emotional mastery is often misunderstood as simply controlling one's anger or suppressing feelings. But true mastery is far deeper than that. It is the conscious cultivation of awareness over your emotional landscape. When you allow emotions to dictate your actions without reflection, you are, in essence, handing the reins of your life to forces outside your control. The moment you begin to observe your emotions, however, and to understand their origin, you reclaim the most precious form of freedom there is, freedom over yourself. Consider for a moment how often we allow external circumstances to provoke us. A careless remark, an unexpected setback, or even a glance that seems dismissive can ignite anger, resentment, or frustration. These reactions may feel justified at the time, but they are, in reality, moments in which we are voluntarily giving away our power. Emotional mastery is a process of stepping back from that immediate reaction, of creating a pause between stimulus and response, and choosing consciously how to act. It is not about being robotic or detached from life. Rather, it is about choosing clarity over chaos. The foundation of emotional mastery lies in self-awareness. Before you can guide your emotions, you must first recognize them. This requires honesty with yourself, the ability to admit what you are feeling without judgment or denial. When you feel anger rising, instead of suppressing it or lashing out, you can ask yourself, why am I feeling this? What does this feeling reveal about my expectations, my boundaries, or my vulnerabilities? By turning inward and analyzing your emotional reactions, you begin to see patterns that previously controlled your behavior unconsciously. You discover the triggers that repeatedly pull you off balance and the unresolved wounds that amplify your reactions. Once you have awareness, the next step is understanding. Every emotion carries information. It is a signal from your inner self about unmet needs, boundaries being crossed, or values being challenged. Anger may indicate that a boundary has been violated. Sadness may reveal a loss or disappointment that needs acknowledgement. Fear may signal an area where preparation or caution is required. By listening carefully to these signals, rather than reacting blindly to their intensity, you transform emotions from tyrants into guides. Emotional mastery is not about eliminating emotion, but about interpreting it intelligently, using it as a compass rather than a whip. An essential aspect of this process is the recognition of impermanence. Emotions are transient by nature. They rise and fall like waves in the ocean. When you cling to them, you amplify their power. When you accept them as temporary experiences passing through consciousness, you diminish their control over your behavior. The realization that anger, frustration, or jealousy is fleeting allows you to hold space for them without becoming consumed. You acknowledge them, learn from them, and then release them, maintaining the equilibrium of your inner state even amid external turbulence. Another pillar of emotional mastery is choice. Every moment presents the opportunity to choose your response. When someone provokes you or circumstances test your patience, you can react impulsively or you can act with intentionality. This choice is the essence of freedom. The more you exercise it, the stronger it becomes. The ability to pause, to reflect, and to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively is a muscle that grows with practice. Each act of self-regulation reinforces your confidence, demonstrating to yourself that you are not at the mercy of feelings or situations, but are the steward of your own emotional experience. Furthermore, emotional mastery cultivates resilience. Life inevitably presents challenges, disappointments, and conflicts. Without mastery, these experiences can destabilize you, leaving you vulnerable to despair or bitterness. With mastery, adversity becomes an arena for growth. You maintain composure, analyze the situation objectively, and decide on the most effective course of action rather than being carried away by panic or resentment. In this way, emotional mastery transforms every challenge into an opportunity to strengthen the fortitude of your mind and the clarity of your heart. Inner freedom, then, is not external. It is not found in circumstances or control over others. It is the liberation that comes from knowing yourself, understanding your emotional responses, and choosing your behavior independently of external provocations. It is the peace of walking through a chaotic world without being swept into its storms. It is the quiet certainty that no matter what happens outside, you retain the power to remain centered, deliberate, and composed. Emotional mastery also deepens your relationships because when you are no longer reacting impulsively, you can communicate more clearly, listen more deeply, and respond with empathy. Others feel your steadiness, and your interactions become less about conflict and more about connection. By mastering your inner life, you create harmony externally as well, shaping environments and interactions through the calm and deliberate energy you bring. Anger is one of the most powerful and dangerous emotions because it has the ability to distort reality. When anger takes hold, it narrows our vision, amplifies our judgments, and blinds us to nuance. The clarity of thought, once so accessible, becomes obscured, replaced by a torrent of impulsive reactions and rigid assumptions. The person consumed by anger is no longer fully present. They are lost in a haze created by their own emotional intensity. This is why the wise recognize that controlling anger is not merely about maintaining politeness or social decorum. It is a matter of preserving one's perception, one's ability to see the world as it truly is. At the core of anger is the illusion that someone or something outside of us has robbed us of our peace. We feel wronged, disrespected, or challenged, and in that moment, our focus shifts entirely outward. We zero in on the offense, the injustice, or the perceived insult, often exaggerating its significance in our minds. What might have been a minor inconvenience can grow into a monumental grievance because the emotional intensity of anger magnifies every detail and skews every interpretation. This is the first way in which anger clouds perception. It amplifies the negative and diminishes the neutral or positive, creating a distorted mental landscape in which small issues appear insurmountable. Anger also impacts memory and judgment. When we are angry, the brain prioritizes threat-related information. We remember every slight, every criticism, every failure of others, while forgetting context, intention, or mitigating factors. The mind becomes selective, focusing on evidence that supports the narrative of injustice while ignoring information that contradicts it. As a result, decisions made in anger are rarely objective or fair. They are reactive, biased, and often regrettable. When we allow anger to dominate, we are not acting with reason or insight, but with the raw intensity of a temporarily hijacked mind. Another aspect of anger's distortion is its effect on our social perception. People consumed by anger often misread the intentions of others, interpreting neutral or ambiguous actions as hostile. A simple misunderstanding can escalate into a prolonged conflict because the lens of anger makes it impossible to see clearly. Relationships suffer because anger clouds empathy and the capacity to understand perspectives beyond our own. The person we believe is attacking us may, in reality, be acting out of their own fears, ignorance, or vulnerability. Yet in the moment of anger, such subtleties vanish, leaving only the illusion of confrontation. Anger also narrows our focus in ways that limit creative or constructive responses. In a state of rage, the mind becomes obsessed with righting perceived wrongs, seeking revenge, or venting frustration. Other possibilities, solutions, compromises, or deeper insights are simply invisible. Our attention is hijacked by the intensity of emotion, leaving no room for reflection or critical thinking. The very energy that could be used to solve problems or achieve goals is instead consumed by the internal fire of anger, which, though vivid, produces little of lasting value. Importantly, the intensity of anger can also have physical consequences that further cloud perception. Heart rate increases, muscles tense, and stress hormones flood the system, all of which impair cognitive function. The brain is biologically primed for survival in these moments, responding as though in imminent danger, even when the threat is merely social or emotional. In this heightened state, rational thought diminishes, memory becomes selective, and reasoning is impaired. The body and mind become allies in magnifying the distortion, making it even harder to see clearly or act wisely. Learning to recognize these effects is the first step toward preserving perception in the face of anger. Awareness allows us to pause, take a breath, and question the automatic responses that anger seeks to impose. By naming the emotion and observing its impact on our thoughts and perceptions, we begin to create distance between stimulus and reaction. This distance is critical because it opens a space for clarity, a moment in which we can evaluate the situation more objectively, weigh the consequences of our responses, and choose actions that align with wisdom rather than impulse. Anger, when unchecked, is a powerful lens that narrows vision, distorts judgment, and obscures the truth. It transforms ordinary events into catastrophes, minor offenses into personal attacks, and fleeting disagreements into enduring conflicts. Yet, by cultivating awareness, by recognizing the mechanics of emotional distortion, and by learning to pause before responding, we begin to clear the fog that anger casts over our perception. In this process, we regain not only the clarity of mind, but also the ability to act with intention, to navigate relationships with insight, and to move through the world with a steadiness that anger alone can never provide. Conflict arises in human interactions largely because we perceive others only through the lens of our own expectations, biases, and assumptions. We assume we know their intentions, judge their actions against our standards, and react based on our interpretations rather than the reality of who they are. When we fail to understand the perspectives of others, we create an internal narrative in which they become adversaries or obstacles rather than fellow human beings navigating their own challenges. Understanding others, therefore, is not a matter of agreeing with them or excusing their behavior. It is the conscious act of seeing the world through a wider lens, recognizing the complexity of human experience, and allowing empathy to guide our responses. At the heart of reducing conflict is the recognition that every person operates from a framework shaped by their history, upbringing, beliefs, and emotional state. Actions that seem irrational, harmful, or offensive on the surface are often the product of unseen factors that have shaped an individual's perception of reality. When someone lashes out, criticizes, or behaves selfishly, it is rarely a simple reflection of our worth or a direct attack on us. By pausing to consider their context, we move from reaction to understanding, and with understanding comes the ability to respond thoughtfully rather than impulsively. Empathy is a critical tool in this process. It allows us to imagine the internal world of another person, to consider their fears, frustrations, and motivations. Empathy does not require that we agree with their actions, nor does it require that we accept harmful behavior without boundaries. Instead, it enables us to approach situations with a calm mind and an open heart, creating the conditions for dialogue rather than confrontation. By understanding the pressures and challenges others face, we can respond in ways that de-escalate tension rather than inflame it, choosing solutions that are constructive rather than combative. Misunderstandings are among the most common causes of conflict. Words can be misinterpreted, intentions misread, and actions misjudged. When we approach others without curiosity or effort to understand, we are more likely to assume hostility where none exists. Conversely, when we take the time to ask questions, to listen actively, and to clarify intentions, we create space for connection rather than opposition. Active listening is more than hearing words. It is attending to tone, body language, and emotional undercurrents, all of which provide critical insight into the person's experience. Understanding others also requires humility. It is the acknowledgement that our perspective is limited and that the world is far larger than our individual experience. This humility allows us to accept that disagreements and differences are inevitable, and that conflict often stems from diverging needs or perceptions rather than malice. By adopting a stance of curiosity rather than judgment, we shift our focus from being right or proving a point to seeking comprehension and harmony. In doing so, we reduce the emotional charge that often fuels disputes, allowing us to respond with reason and compassion. Conflict reduction is also about anticipating patterns of behavior. When we understand the tendencies, triggers, and communication styles of those around us, we can navigate interactions more effectively. This does not mean manipulating or controlling others, but rather approaching them with awareness of how they are likely to react. For instance, knowing that someone reacts defensively to criticism allows us to frame feedback in a constructive manner that reduces resistance. Understanding personalities, emotional habits, and past experiences equips us to communicate with precision, empathy, and impact, minimizing unnecessary friction. Moreover, understanding others fosters forgiveness. When we recognize that harmful actions often arise from fear, ignorance, or pain, it becomes easier to release resentment and cultivate patience. Forgiveness is not about condoning poor behavior. It is about freeing ourselves from the grip of negativity that perpetuates conflict. By stepping into the perspective of the other, we see that their actions are part of a larger narrative, one in which we are not the center of all causes and effects. This insight reduces the emotional burden of conflict, making interactions less reactive and more deliberate. Finally, understanding others encourages collaboration rather than competition. In any interaction, whether personal or professional, perceiving the motivations and needs of others allows for solutions that honor all parties involved. When we approach disagreements with empathy and insight, we shift from a mindset of opposition to one of problem solving. Conflict diminishes, not because problems disappear, but because our perception expands to include multiple perspectives, and our responses become informed by comprehension rather than anger, pride, or fear. Through understanding, we cultivate the ability to navigate human relationships with clarity, patience, and resilience. It is the skill of seeing beneath the surface, of recognizing the humanity in others even when their behavior challenges us, and of choosing responses that reduce tension and foster cooperation. This understanding transforms conflict from a destructive force into an opportunity for connection, growth, and learning, allowing us to interact in the world with balance, perspective, and a sense of calm. Self-control is often misunderstood as merely resisting temptation or suppressing impulses, but its true significance goes far deeper. It is the disciplined cultivation of willpower, the conscious management of one's desires, emotions, and actions in alignment with higher principles and long-term goals. Character is not something bestowed upon us. It is forged in the moments when we exercise restraint, choose deliberation over impulsivity, and act in accordance with our values rather than immediate gratification. Each choice of self-control, no matter how small, strengthens the foundation of our inner integrity and shapes the person we become. At its core, self-control is the bridge between intention and action. Every human being has thoughts, desires, and instincts, many of which are fleeting, reactive, or driven by circumstance. Without self-control, these impulses dominate, guiding behavior without reflection or purpose. When we cultivate restraint, however, we introduce a space between impulse and response. In this space lies freedom. The freedom to act consciously rather than reactively, to choose virtue over convenience, and to align our daily actions with the character we wish to embody. In essence, self-control transforms raw energy into purposeful action, shaping our identity through deliberate choices. Character is revealed not in comfort but in challenge. The true test of self-control comes when circumstances provoke us, tempt us, or place obstacles in our path. When anger rises, patience is required. When fear threatens to dictate behavior, courage must guide us. When desire tempts us to abandon principles, discipline must prevail. Each act of restraint in the face of difficulty is a stone laid in the foundation of character, building a structure that is resilient, dependable, and consistent. Over time, these moments accumulate, and the person who exercises self-control becomes known not only for their actions, but for the reliability and steadiness of their spirit. Self-control also strengthens character by fostering consistency. People who are ruled by impulse are often unpredictable, swayed by emotion, environment, or immediate circumstance. In contrast, those who cultivate restraint develop a stability of behavior that earns trust, respect, and admiration. This consistency is not about rigidity. It is about coherence between values, intentions, and actions. It is the ability to act according to principle, regardless of external pressures, and it demonstrates a level of integrity that others can rely upon. Character, after all, is revealed in how we behave when no one is watching, and self-control is the tool that allows our private actions to reflect our highest ideals. Another aspect of self-control is its relationship with delayed gratification. Life often rewards patience, perseverance, and long-term planning. Yet these qualities require the ability to resist immediate impulses in favor of future benefits. By exercising restraint, we train ourselves to prioritize what is meaningful and enduring over what is fleeting. This practice strengthens character because it reinforces values over whims, vision over short-term satisfaction, and purpose over distraction. The disciplined mind becomes capable of navigating complex situations without being swayed by momentary emotions or desires, and this ability is a hallmark of strength and maturity. Self-control also shapes our moral and ethical framework. When we resist harmful actions, whether they are lies, acts of revenge, or indulgence in selfish desires, we reinforce our commitment to principles and integrity. Each moment of self-restraint is a reaffirmation of who we want to be, a conscious act of alignment with our moral compass. Character, therefore, is not an abstract concept but a living practice, cultivated in the small, repeated decisions where self-control exercises its quiet influence. By choosing self-restraint over reaction, discipline over indulgence, and reflection over impulsivity, we gradually construct a mind and spirit that reflect the ideals we aspire to embody. Importantly, self-control strengthens character not only for personal benefit, but for the influence it has on relationships and society. Individuals who exhibit restraint inspire confidence and admiration, create environments of trust, and foster cooperation rather than conflict. Their steadiness provides a stabilizing force in interactions, as their decisions are deliberate, measured, and principled. In this way, self-control extends beyond the self, shaping the character of communities, influencing culture, and demonstrating the profound impact that individual discipline can have on the broader world. Ultimately, self-control is the practice of mastery over oneself. It is the conscious decision to navigate life with intention, to act in alignment with values rather than impulses, and to forge a character that is resilient, consistent, and principled. It transforms challenges into opportunities for growth, distractions into lessons in focus, and temptations into exercises in discipline. Through self-control, we craft not only our actions but our identity, building a character that reflects the highest aspects of our potential and reinforcing the inner strength that allows us to meet life with wisdom, courage, and clarity. True peace is not found in circumstances, possessions, or the approval of others. It is an inner state, cultivated deliberately through awareness, reflection, and self-mastery. Many spend their lives searching for calm in external sources, success, relationships, recognition, believing that once they achieve or acquire these things, serenity will follow. Yet, external conditions are inherently unstable. They shift, disappear, or fail to meet expectations. Peace that depends on what is outside of us is fragile and temporary. Lasting peace arises from within, from the cultivation of a mind and spirit that remains steady regardless of what unfolds in the world. The journey to internal peace begins with self-awareness. To know oneself is to understand the patterns of thought, emotion, and reaction that shape daily experience. Often, we are unaware of how much of our discomfort arises not from events themselves, but from our interpretations of them. A single setback may feel catastrophic because the mind interprets it as a reflection of personal failure or inadequacy. By observing our own thoughts without judgment, we begin to recognize the stories we tell ourselves, the assumptions we make, and the habitual reactions that disturb our calm. Awareness provides the first glimpse of freedom because it illuminates the fact that peace is not about controlling the world, but about mastering one's perception of it. Acceptance is another cornerstone of inner peace. Life is inevitably filled with circumstances beyond our control, unexpected changes, disappointments, and the actions of others. Resistance to these realities generates frustration, anger, and anxiety. Peace comes from acknowledging what is, without resignation or passivity, and choosing to respond with clarity and calm rather than reacting in turmoil. Acceptance does not mean indifference. It means recognizing the limits of our control and directing energy toward what can be influenced, our own attitudes, choices, and responses. This shift of focus from the external to the internal is liberating, for it redirects attention away from sources of stress that cannot be changed toward the cultivation of inner stability. Mindfulness and the practice of presence are essential tools in achieving peace from within. When the mind is constantly dwelling on the past or projecting into the future, anxiety and regret take root. By focusing on the present moment, attending fully to what is happening now, we reduce the power of fears, resentments, and imagined scenarios. The present is the only reality we truly experience. By embracing it fully, we connect with a quiet center that remains untouched by the turbulence of external events. Through meditation, reflection, or simply conscious attention to daily experiences, we learn to anchor ourselves in this inner calm, allowing it to guide our thoughts and actions. Emotional mastery further strengthens inner peace. Emotions, when unmanaged, can act like storms, sweeping away clarity and stability. Anger, fear, jealousy, and impatience distort perception and disrupt tranquility. By cultivating the ability to observe emotions without immediate reaction, to understand their origin, and to choose responses consciously, we gain control over our inner environment. This mastery does not suppress feeling, it transforms it into insight. Anger can teach boundaries, fear can teach caution, and sadness can teach awareness of loss or unmet needs. Through this process, peace emerges as a steady undercurrent beneath the fluctuations of emotional experience. Forgiveness is also central to cultivating peace. Holding on to resentment or bitterness creates internal conflict, keeping the mind and heart in a state of tension. Forgiveness, whether toward others or oneself, releases this grip, allowing energy to flow freely and calm to settle. Forgiveness does not mean excusing harmful behavior. It means acknowledging reality and choosing not to remain enslaved by past offenses. It is an act of self-liberation that reinforces inner stability and prevents external events from dictating emotional equilibrium. Finally, peace from within is strengthened through alignment with values and purpose. When actions, thoughts, and decisions are consistent with personal principles, inner harmony deepens. There is a profound serenity that comes from living authentically, from acting with integrity, and from pursuing goals that reflect one's true priorities. Conversely, when behavior conflicts with values, internal tension arises, and peace becomes elusive. By continually examining choices, cultivating awareness, and making decisions rooted in conscious intent, the mind and heart align, creating a stable foundation that sustains calm regardless of external circumstances. Inner peace also fosters resilience. Life will always present challenges, disappointments, and moments of uncertainty. Those who have cultivated peace from within are not immune to difficulty, but they meet adversity with composure and perspective. Calmness becomes a source of strength, allowing for clearer thinking, better problem solving, and the ability to maintain equilibrium in the face of chaos. In this way, inner peace is not passive, it is active, empowering, and profoundly practical, shaping behavior, perception, and relationships in a way that endures beyond the fleeting circumstances of daily life.